This video is going to be kind of different from my usual stuff because this is more like a podcast, honestly. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to talk to King Recon, an absolute legend of the One Piece community, about what we think could happen in the next chapter and just the end game of One Piece as a whole. So, hope you enjoy, and if you do, consider supporting the channel and make sure to check out King Recon in the description down below. I think doing intros is kind of like whack in live because we've literally been talking for, however long. So let's just bring up some wild, wacky topic. Let's think. Let's see. Mihawk's backstory. That sounds fun, right?
All right.
Dracula Mihawk.
That's right. Let's get right into that.
All right. So what I'm thinking for Mihawk's backstory off rip is I noticed something really interesting in the little Dendemushi conversation he was having with Crocodile, right?
All right.
And when he was talking about specifically he can't trust anyone, I've never noticed it on Mihawk, so I don't know if you have before, but Mihawk has a scar like right around his like right shoulder area, and it's like very noticeable, and I'm just thinking, oh no, he got betrayed or something. It's just like, oh, something crazy has to have happened.
What fascinates me about that scar is have we seen that outside of that chapter?
I don't think so. That's why I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, that's some fascinating stuff. The most recent chapter with the whole Marine Hunter thing, I feel like that by itself is going to make that Mihawk backstory, whenever we do get it, amazing. I don't care how long it is. Just seeing Mihawk chasing Marines is like the coolest thing ever. Like I don't care who they are. They could be a captain, a vice admiral, an admiral. The fact that there's somebody out here who has no crew and is chasing Marines is the coolest thing ever, But no, you're absolutely right. Like if there actually is a betrayal part of this here, that's fascinating or there is just someone, if that is a scar that he got back in the past, then maybe that's the person that he defeated in order to become the world's strongest swordsman. Or if it was just recently, then someone had to have, I don't know, maybe they threw everybody at him and no one gets lucky, but something happened. All right, it was just recently.
His armor was cracked, just a little bit, but it was cracked.
Just a little bit. Yeah, the person had to have been at least bare minimum admiral level. Bare minimum.
Yeah, I definitely think the Marine Hunter stuff is just like, I was never a Mihawk guy. Like Mihawk was cool, but he wasn't like that guy to me for a long time. But the Mihawk like hype, I feel like has never been higher, literally ever. Like, oh my god, 3.6 billion for one guy with no crew, and he was the Marine Hunter, so the Marines had to pay him to stop hunting them, and now he's hunting them again.
Bro,
it's just like all of the little cogs turning for his backstory. It's just like, bro,
the man has 3.6 billion, which is higher than 3 of the current emperors, and the only thing he has to his name is his blade, his boat, which is smaller than my car, and Ghost Girl.
True.
So it's like, Perona might be the strongest Yonko commander, alright? Like, high key, if Mihawk is rocking 3.6, but all jokes aside, the fact that Mihawk is just rocking his boat and his blade, and it has 3.6, that means that's all based on what they think this man can do.
It's just he's like, that intimidating.
Yes.
Oh my god, it's like, kind of ridiculous. Like,
dude, I remember when I read chapter 1010, and I saw Zoro and Luffy both blooming in that fight. And one of the things that made that so exciting is we know that Shanks and Mihawk are the individuals both of them are chasing. So it's like, if Luffy's doing this and and Zoro's doing that, what in the world are Mihawk and Shanks doing? And I love how we're already starting to get a little bit of that in post Wano / the first chapter of the Final Saga. It's just exciting stuff.
Like seeing Shanks literally snipe Green Bull so hard. It's just like, how far does this go? Like, we've literally just seen Advanced Conquerors Hockey, and then we see that?
and we see that.
Oh my
It's
god.
like we realize just how far we have to go. Still.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Because One Piece has always had that ladder kind of thing. Like, oh, there's always going to be that one up for Luffy.
Yeah.
And Luffy literally became God. Literally became God. And it still feels like there's a one up.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Let me ask you about that, because that actually really fascinates me in regards to the whole gods in One Piece thing. What do you think? Because I haven't answered for this, but I really want to hear your perspective first. What do you think about gods in the world of One Piece in regards to how that's going to be handled in the Void Century? Because obviously, these are key figures from the past that they consider to be these godlike figures. So what do you think Oda's cooking there in regards to the god stuff?
So what I'm really curious about is if these god figure people might have something to do with the creation of the devil fruits themselves, because I personally can't imagine there not being that connection, because we never seen how devil fruits are made, and now we have these named figures from such a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like there just has to be some kind of connection there. Like, obviously, for example, the sun god, he's been passed down for many generations, but maybe there are some other ones as well, and maybe they have something to do with the devil fruit. Like in Skypiea, we'll learn about some other gods in One Piece. Maybe they are also from the ancient kingdom. Maybe this used to be like the rulers of the world before the world government took over. I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know how exactly they would have developed these powers, or if they, I don't think they could have had these type of powers. But that just raised the question, like, if they did, like, what exactly is going to go down then? Like, it's very hard to explain for me, just, without knowing knowledge of, like, the other, if there are other gods, obviously, but I don't know. I definitely feel a connection between devil fruits and the ancient kingdom, because that's something I feel has to be around. Maybe God Valley, but I doubt that, because that's, like, too modern of a thing, in my opinion. But overall, I definitely think that there is some sort of thing that Oda has brewing there with the gods of the One Piece world. And I'm not entirely sure how he's going to go about it. If they're humans, it would be a wild thing if they were like Lunarians and they had some wacky abilities because they're not from Earth or something like that. But I'm not entirely sure how far he's going to go with that. We already know there's like space pirates and stuff.
Oh, yeah. See, that's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this before I tell you what I think is a great possibility. Have you ever played Xenogears?
I know what it is. I do know what it is. That's like the Xenoblade kind of spin-off prequel thing, right?
Yes, it was the first one that Takahashi made while he was at Squaresoft. And then when Xenogears came out, it came out incomplete because they were not necessarily rushing him, but they just wanted to meet the deadline. They gave him the opportunity, and so after that, they had a following at Squaresoft, and so then Namco signed Takahashi. He created Xenosaga. Then after Xenosaga, Nintendo liked what they saw, and they brought him over to do Xenoblade. So it's kind of like he has all these ideas in his mind, and he's creating it over like different platforms. But it's basically I'm not gonna say it's the same thing, but it's very similar in regards to, you can tell Takahashi was the one behind all of them, because it just has so much of his interest. But the reason why I bring up Xenogears is because Xenogears to me was the most ambitious and raw in regards to the most that he ever put onto a game that you just know it. I think Xenogears is the most ambitious game ever made, at least out of the ones I played. And one of the reasons for that is how he tackles this concept of gods in the world of his series, and how deep it goes. Like, the lore goes around 15,000 years into the past of where the actual story takes place. So he did a lot there. And one thing that really changed my perspective on the Void Century after playing that game is about, especially after hearing about Nika, is about the gods thing, because I honestly believe that Oda, especially after Wano, I think he gave us a little bit of a hint. You know how in Wano, where we see Luffy stretch for the first time there, and it's like the beginning of the series where the people in Wano are like, is this man using sorcery, magic? Like, what in the world is that? And I feel like that very same thing happened in the past when people didn't even know what devil fruits were. Like, that wasn't a concept, that wasn't an idea. So imagine somebody in the past having Joy Boy's fruit, or having the Nika fruit. They're going around and they're turning things into rubber. How would you not think this dude is a god? You know, or if another person has the flame fruit and they're shooting fire, how do you not think this man's a godly figure? You know, like, if they have no knowledge of what these things are, they're going to treat these individuals like these celestial beings that are above them, especially, like you said, if they're Lunarians and they have these natural, like, wings or things that are considered to be, like, angelic or whatever. And that, to me, is going to be the most fascinating part of the Void Century. Whenever we see, or one of the most fascinating parts, because of course, you know, there's a lot of stuff, the Will of D and all that stuff, but in regards to the whole god concept, now that it is with our main character, I look forward to seeing how Oda handles it in regards to, I think the way that he's going with this is these are legendary figures of the past that were not gods at all. They were actually individuals that were perceived to be gods that just had things that they couldn't comprehend, they couldn't understand. So they stapled, because they didn't have the knowledge of hockey or devil fruits or any of this stuff. They just put the name gods. They're like, yo, this guy's creating fire out of nowhere. If somebody had like Monet's fruit, they're making snow, like they're changing the weather, or like going back to Nika, this person has the ability to turn everything into Toon World. Like, like how in the world are they not a figure like this? And so I think that's going to be interesting, and it goes into your thought process of the beginning of fruits. And I think that's going to be a super cool time for Oda to play around with so many not necessarily controversial topics, but topics maybe that he wants to explore himself about, you know, the past and how that has influenced the present, things that the past thought was true that now we consider to be false. We saw him talk about that in Skypiea, with being progressive in certain ways of lines of thinking that were in the past, that if we continue to keep that same line of thinking, we're just going to go extinct. We saw that with Nolan Kagara. And if he does that, except on like a large scale concept, I think it would be really cool, especially for a shonen battle manga. And we know that One Piece is never restricted by that, but it's just, if he were to do something like that, especially with the whole Nika concept, I think that would be awesome. But if there really are gods within the verse, as in regards to like 20 individuals who came down from the moon, and they all had these crazy abilities, and that's how the concept of fruits became to be, or maybe it is going to be like the creation, or the Adam and Eve story, or whatever creation story that he wants to go with, and that's how like all this, or whatever he ends up doing. That's one of the most interesting things for me, because I always like seeing how stories like this, especially in Japan, end up tackling like the creation of our world, where we come from. Like, this is going to be Oda's opportunity to play around with all that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited for the Void Century is this whole gods thing. But I wanted to give my piece on that, because it's just, the Nika thing is by itself amazing, but it could be even more amazing when we get the Void Century flashback and we find out exactly like why people perceived him to be this way, or what he was actually doing. Was he actually doing it on purpose? Was he just having fun and he just happened to be freeing people? Like, we don't know what his intentions were. So I very much looking forward to seeing how, if history was actually telling the truth in regards to, like, and we know in One Piece that's almost never the case, so how was it in the past? Like, were these individuals actually doing what is stated in the history books within the series? And so I'm just excited. I can't wait. It's going to be a good time for the Void Century stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of thoughts off of that, like, off rip. So firstly, when you talked about like Nika and the other gods getting their fruits, and it made me think, this is like kind of redundant, but the world government has always been like, oh, the Gomu Gomu no Mi that's a fake name, and the real name is this. What if the Gomu Gomu no Mi is simply just the Gomu Gomu no Mi, and it's not some god ability. It's just it was given to this, person who is now deemed as a god, and it was given that name. So it's still the same ability.
Exactly.
And this whole like name change is sort of like a bait and switch. Like, oh no, Luffy has to be this sort of saving grace figure. He's the chosen one. But like, really, he is, but he isn't, which I think is really cool about One Piece. It makes it feel like this isn't Luffy's goal is still the Pirate King, but being the Pirate King and his goal, which is everyone being able to do whatever they want, don't fully line up, because the Pirate King is still a king. But Luffy, you know what I mean. He wants to be, basically an overseer rather than a king, dictating things.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to bring up was about gods, and it made me really think back to Dressrosa and God Usopp, obviously, because that is a genuine moment of like they're witnessing a miracle. This is the moment that it's gonna happen. It's gonna be this magical person who saved us all from this evil, especially since it's a celestial dragon. They saved us from this horrible person who is deemed as God, which is probably what happened with the world government and the ancient kingdom. It's like a whole cyclical kind of thing. And he came down. And Usopp, he is he develops observation hockey in the arc, but he's just a guy.
Exactly.
There's nothing really special about him. And I don't want to be, saying that these god figures of the past might not have had something special about them. And then they got these devil fruits. And then they started having these godlike abilities. And then they were like, oh, something has to be there. It's just, I feel as though there's a lot that's going to happen with the Ancient Kingdom and the Void Century. And one thing I'm really thinking is, besides the devil fruits having like a will of their own, like the Zoan ones, there is like a devil of the sea, and they made the fruits, and like the gods devils dynamic, and these gods who are godly figures like Nika actually sort of bit the devil fruit, and then it's ironically enough made them even more godly to the normal people. And I think that might be what Oda's planning, because we already know there's Adam and Eve as like trees in this world, so the idea of that is already kind of planted in there.
It's even called the same thing. I think it's the Garden of Eden, if I'm not mistaken, is the name of where the Adam tree.
Oh, really?
If I'm not mistaken, yeah. I might be capping, but I think that's true.
And even in Skypiea, which is the arc where we first learn about the sun god and all that, there's literally that massive snakes, so there's obviously all this sort of Christian symbolism.
Exactly.
So it's like, I don't know, something could be brewing with this whole gods and like normal people being not that dissimilar, which I think is pretty crazy for Oda to do this. That's a big bait and switch, if I'm being honest. But I think that would shut a lot of the people up who are like, no, Luffy's the chosen one now. He was always, this is. I think that would be pretty crazy to do.
I think what Oda should do for the Void Century, honestly, whenever we get to it, is I want him to do that flashback as the most unique flashback. And what I mean by that is, I think it's going to be a flashback that's told as like a fairy tale. In regards to, I think it's going to be narrated in by an unreliable narrator, but we're going to live the flashback, and we're going to see that the words don't match, the narration does not match what actually happened. And the reason why I say that is when Odin, whenever they were saying goodbye to Roger, he said, and they were all good men and no cried that day. I think there's going to be a lot of that, where Odin wrote down that no one cried that day and they were all bawling their eyes out. And I think that back in that Void Century flashback, because I do believe it's going to be presented like a fairy tale, and we're going to have like basically the creation of the One Piece verse up until 800 years ago. And whenever we see all that, he's going to have to skip through time. So maybe like one chapter is dedicated to the very first, I don't know, the birth of whoever, right? The first person to be born in the One Piece verse, and then like with the whole Devil Fruit thing and all that, and then we move into the next chapter, maybe it's a couple hundred years after that, and then we move into maybe the actual protagonist of the backstory, which is Joy Boy, and then that's whenever, especially with Gear 5th, Just imagine a whole bunch of chapters in like the Gear 5th art style, where everybody's in the Gear 5th
Oh
art
my
style.
god.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be
I think
so
that'd be
sick.
cool. You know, like he just, because he wants everybody to be happy, everyone else is also like him, and everybody's just always laughing. And maybe Roger, because we know that Roger, of course. And honestly, let me actually ask you about that. Who was Roger talking about whenever he said, "Joy Boy, I lived in the same era as you"? Do you think he was talking about Joy Boy of 800 years ago or Luffy?
Oh, I never even thought of that. That's kind of crazy. I don't know if he was talking to Luffy because he believes that Ace is going to be, the one who will bring the dawn, the one 20 years in the future that will do all that. I think he has to have been talking about Joy Boy of the past, because the Joy Boy of the past is the one in the treasure, who left the treasure there, obviously.
Yeah.
But now, there's a theory that I saw not that long ago that sort of said the One Piece itself is, all right, this is kind of hard to explain. I'm just gonna do a little quick, summary. The theory is by a YouTuber. His name is Marshall D. Preach. If you
Shout out to Marshall Lee Preach.
Exactly.
I know him.
Exactly.
Shout out to him.
And at the end of the theory, basically he says that the One Piece is something we've always seen all the time. And so the One Piece itself is a statue of Luffy. That is what the One Piece is. Which sounds weird, but essentially the statue is sort of this smiling little monkey thing, so Luffy, right? And it's saying that it's like, it's kind of hard to explain with that. There was a lot of like in-depth wordplay stuff. But essentially what it is it seems like this really grand thing, but it's just like a little toy, something very normal, something very, something meant to bring joy to someone, you know what I mean? And
like the monkey bombs. I'm a Call of Duty fan. And,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
And in Zombies, these are the monkey bombs. And the first thing I thought of was like a little
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. And what it sort of is meant to be is like, how in the One Piece logo the eye is, like Luffy? That's what it's supposedly gonna look like. And I'm like, that is pretty risky and cool if that is true.
That's brilliant.
It's always been in our face, like this is it. And apparently there's gonna be something along the lines, and they're not gonna say it's Luffy, and they're gonna say it's Laffy, and the story of the world is going to be Luffy's journey, where he's talking about all these crazy things like, oh look, there's this one guy I fought with, he looked like a pineapple. There's this one girl, she's a hammock, you know what I mean? Like, so Luffy giving all these stupid nicknames to everyone is what's in this story. And they're gonna say, oh, he laughs all the time, so let's call him Laffy. And that's why it's called Laugh Tale. It's really in depth. It's
I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I genuinely love that, dude.
Yeah. And so the history of the world, this is the ending line of it. It's not the history of the world, it's his story. And it's just like, oh man.
I love that. And the reason why I love it is because it goes into the whole fairy tale thing. And the reason why I was asking you earlier if Roger was referring to Luffy. Because the weirdest thing for me, and I've rewatched episode 1015 like a million times at this point, but every time I get to that section where Odin talks about in 20 years, specifically, in 20 years there will be powerful new individuals to come in, and they'll be the ones to free the country and open the borders. So wait for Joy Boy whenever he doesn't say that, but later on in the Odin flashback, he says we gotta open the border so Joy Boy can make it here. And so there's a part of that flashback that we don't know about. Like, there's a piece of the Roger story that we did not get to see, where they found out something that's going to take place 20 years in the future. And so that to me is so fascinating, which is why after the anime had that scene, I was like, wait a minute, was Roger really referring to the original Joy Boy? So if what you're saying is true, and Marshall D. Preach is spitting, and we have, like, he's actually talking about Laffy, and that's the reason why he named him, because Luffy's that's such a strange name, when you actually think about it. I've never heard of that name, but in the same way that he took Usopp from a fairy tale, in the same way he's taken some of these other names from fairy tales and fables and Viking stories, It's like, why not? Why we know Oda to do classic wordplay. Why wouldn't he call him Laffy? That's I actually really like that. That's even if only pieces of that are gonna end up being true, or because we know how Oda is. If anything is even remotely similar to that, I love the idea. I think that's actually pretty cool.
I like the idea a lot of the treasure itself being something very insignificant. It's sort of like, the Holy Grail looks like a normal cup while the rest are all these gold cups,
That's true.
That's what I thought the One Piece was going to be for such a long time. Like, it's like a big sake cup so everyone can drink out of it, Because the sake cup has obviously been a huge thing for, like, Whitebeard's group and, the Straw-Hat Grand Fleet, Ace, Sabo, Luffy. It's this bonding experience thing. So the One Piece brings everyone together, that. And it looks normal while there's, a bunch of stuff that looks more like treasure. And that's the stuff like Blackbeard would go after, for example.
Yeah, true that.
But overall, just this idea of it being something so insignificant, like a little toy or something, you know what I mean?
You just made me think about something. Could you imagine that is what Oda's going to do? And because I've been thinking this entire time, how are we gonna make it to the One Piece? Because for me, the Straw Hats have to have them one by themselves, like Roger and his crew, right? Where they're not surrounded by Law and Kid and Shanks and Blackbeard and all them. But what about if the path inside or to Laugh-Tale is gonna be just like everything we've seen up until this point, except it's actually gonna finally work in Luffy's favor, where something within Laugh-Tale, so I don't know, within a distance, Nami will be like, oh, there's a lot of gold over there. But there'll be this little gleaming little point of interest that leads Luffy in the other direction. And so, while everyone else is going after the quote-unquote gold, or what they believe the One Piece is, the Straws are the only ones who go after the insignificant little object because he finds it interesting. And that's the One Piece.
That'd be amazing, yeah.
It goes into the whole series up until this point where, oh, we're going over here. No, this looks more interesting. Let's go over here.
Exactly.
And that'd be cool. So, I like it, man. There's some good stuff brewing here. Some good stuff.
I definitely think it would be really interesting if I do want other people to be there, you know what I mean, like on Laugh-Tale. But I do want Luffy and his crew to have that individual moment. And I think they kind of foreshadowed it in Stampede. I think Stampede did a really good scene with that, where there's literally the massive ship filled with treasure, but there's one thing in there, and it's Roger's treasure. And of course, it's the most insignificant looking, like, old chest ever. Yeah. And besides Luffy, the only person who knew about it is Buggy, because Buggy was on Roger's crew. It's just like, oh, of course he would know about it. But the idea that, and Nami did point it out, like, oh, look, that one looks old. But, like, I feel like the way you described it, with Luffy going after something, because Nami, obviously, much more realistically, would probably just, like, faint because of seeing all this money in front of her. But Luffy would go after something like, oh, look, that one has a little funny symbol on it. Let's get that, Yeah. Something very, insignificant, but it's just that's what grabs his attention,
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be the best way of going about it. Because if we're thinking about who's going to be at the end game, it's shockingly, it's probably going to be Buggy, Blackbeard, Shanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
All these people, and they'll probably be scrapping it out.
Yeah, I do believe that's where Oda's going to take all of this, right? Where right now we're seeing both the outside world and then the pirate world. We're starting to see all of these gears moving. We saw Shanks starting to make his move now. We know where Blackbeard is currently going. Well, we don't know where he's going, but we know that he's going somewhere. Hopefully we'll find out soon. And we know the Cross Guild with Buggy as, of course, the Emperor there, what he's currently attempting to do with chasing after Marines and whatnot. So I do believe once we get to Laugh-Tale, all of that stuff is gonna meet there, right? Like, it's gonna be kind of like a Marineford type of thing, but just for that storyline. While on the outside, the around the world stuff is cooking, and then once Luffy finds the One Piece, or well, actually, let me ask you this: do you think now that just recently we started hearing more about this, Luffy finds the One Piece and then the series is over, type of talk, right? And before everybody, because of Whitebeard's speech, we thought, okay, he finds the One Piece. After that is this massive war. I still believe that when Oda states when the One Piece is found, the series is over. What that means to me is when the One Piece is found, to us as the viewer and to Oda, that means we're in the final stretch. Like the One Piece is found. That's when their story meets the outside of the world story. They connect, and the biggest war the world has ever seen happen. And that is like the final part of the story right there. But I want to hear your thoughts on that in particular, because I've heard a lot of discussion on that of like, oh man, if Luffy finds the One Piece and the series ends like 2 chapters later, that'd be trash. And I'm like, no. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, Luffy finding the One Piece, and if there is going to be the massive war happening before that happens, after it happens, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think Luffy is going to find the One Piece, like, a significant chunk before the series ends, because I feel as though, for example, the revolutionaries, that has been Oda's back burner plot since chapter 100, and maybe even before. But, you know, it's always been on the back burner, and Oda's been waiting. He's given us little bits of what's in there over and over and over again. And it's been going crazy ever since the Reverie. You know, he's been like, all right, here, maybe you get a whole bowl of this stuff instead of just a sample, you know? So seeing all of this stuff sort of slowly trickle in, and especially with Flame Emperor Sabo, which is honestly more hype for me than Sabo being alive. Like,
shout out to Flame Emperor Sabo, dude.
He's like, the Sabo hype is so real right now. It's absurd. But seeing all this stuff finally like come way to the surface, like, hey readers, we're seeing all this stuff. Like I was saying, Sabo is like literally like remember Caribou, how he had that cover story where he was like Che Guevara? Sabo is literally Che Guevara right now. It's crazy. And seeing all this stuff really come to the forefront, and the Marines, like Akainu specifically, talking right after that scene, it's like, okay, well, clearly the Marines and the revolutionaries are doing something else at the moment. They're a bit preoccupied with each other. So the pirates, this is the moment where Luffy and Shanks are going to reconvene, you know? This is where all the stuff is finally going to come to a head. And from what I'm thinking personally, here's like a brief like bullet point for it. I think, I don't know if it's confirmed, but a lot of people have been saying that of the 3 islands that Kid, Law, and Luffy are going to, one of them is Blackbeard's. I forget which, but it's Kid or Law's is Blackbeard's, and the other is Elbaf apparently. But Luffy is heading to Sphinx Island, which is really cool. And I'm not like jazzed about this idea fully at the moment, because I thought it would have been cool if Yamato was at Sphinx Island, because Yamato and Ace and Luffy would have had a, you know what I mean? That would have been a nice moment. But
don't remind me, bro.
But we still get a really nice moment with Luffy and Ace, obviously, and that's something I've been waiting for a really long time. And then thinking about that even further, if Luffy goes to Sphinx Island, because Luffy hasn't been able to talk to Marco really in Wano, he'll finally be able to tell Marco and all the other Whitebeard pirates what Ace's final message was, which is thanking them for loving him. You know, that would be a really powerful moment. So then after that, there's going to be Shanks stuff, at least in my opinion. Maybe, this is the hardest maybe ever, maybe the Davy Back fight is not for Blackbeard, but it's for the Cross Guild. That's a maybe that I have kind of been...
That sounds fun, bro.
Yeah.
Luffy versus Buggy, like Luffy versus Foxy. Oh,
yeah,
I'm down for that.
Because it's such a joke at this point, but it's just like, yeah. And then that would be where Zoro versus Mihawk happens in the Davy Back fight.
They better prepare a different planet.
And I think it would be really great, because we get to see some craziness happen now. So Mr. 3 is now with Crocodile again, that was a great moment from the chapter. I absolutely love that. We get to see Robin and Crocodile together again. That would be so awesome. So we get to see... There's a lot of stuff that could be there. For example, Crocodile can finally meet Mr. Prince, and he'll probably be the person Sanji fights, because he's the third highest bounty, and I know Jinbei is a higher bounty than Sanji now, but Sanji versus Crocodile, oh, that would be so hype.
That'd be fun.
And the little thing I really want to happen is Usopp meeting Buggy and them both being absolutely terrified of each other. I think that would be the funniest thing ever.
It's like, yo, you're Emperor Buggy.
Yeah.
And, Buggy's like, you're a god.
You're God, Usopp. I think that would be so hysterical. I can't think of any for like Frankie or Brooke off the top of my head, but like just the amount of little interactions that are possible with the Cross Guild reconvening with the Straw Hats, it's perfect. You know what I mean? It's genuinely perfect.
I love that idea. Bro.
Yeah,
genuinely.
And I think if they have a Davy back fight, it would be really crazy, because now, also, the main reason I think they're going to run to the Cross Guild soon is because I personally believe Caribou is working not for Blackbeard but for Crocodile.
That's fun. That's lovely.
Because Caribou, obviously, he's been with this ancient weapon knowledge this whole time, right?
Yeah.
And
the only other person that we know that has that is Big Croc.
Exactly. And he just heard about Pluton, and then the same chapter we hear about Pluton, Crocodile is brought into the story. And it's like, facts. Oh, there has to be like, you know, I'm doing like the finger mesh thing right now. It's like, this is it. This is the moment.
I like it.
And there's a really great theory. I don't know who originated this, sadly, but Randy Troy, no, actually not Randy Troy, Tekking and Randy Troy, they were talking in Theory for Theory, they did. Mm-hmm. Shout outs to both of them, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. You know, shout out to both of them.
Huge.
Both goats.
Exactly. And they were talking about Caribou being Mr. Six, because we never saw Mr. Six in Alabasta. And I was like, I can buy that. I can buy that
too, dude.
But here's the thing. It gets better. It gets way better. So, instead we're saying Caribou is Mr. 10. And here's the main reason it was like, you're like fishing, right? You know, the lure is right there. You're going to grab onto it. But you don't yet. Something's up with it. But then they were like, nah, Mr. 10. And this is what got me. Because Caribou's always had the stupidly big X on his shirt. He's always had it. And I'm like, why does he have this X on his shirt? And then I'm thinking to Caribou's cover story, right? And who, out of any character in One Piece, who is the one that interacts with Caribou? Of course, it's Diaz Drake. So they're just really pushing this thing with, like, his association with 10. And it's just like, oh, man. Is this it? Is he really Mr. 10?
Dude. And that would explain why Oda's been cooking it for so long. He hasn't been able to tell us who this person is.
Because he hasn't.
Thought back in Fisherman Island it was Kaido. But if it's Croc?
Dude, if it's Crocodile, oh my god. It's like Oda literally, he just went into like the nether regions of the bag he had and is like, here's this like really huge thing he just pulls out.
Wait, then that would, oh man. That means Endgame Croc is gonna know where all three ancient weapons are? That's crazy.
Probably.
I love it.
Oh man.
Next time we find out about, when we find out about Uranus, Caribou has to be present.
Yeah.
He would have to be present.
Oh my god. I did see some little concepts floating around that the world government's Straw Hat thing is Uranus, which I think could be kind of cool because obviously the Straw Hats have Poseidon because Shirahoshi's their friend and all. Many people theorize Blackbeard is going to have Pluton,
I can definitely see that.
which would be cool, you know. He's a destructive man, so he's probably like, that is our thing. Mm-hmm. And so it would be cool if like Blackbeard obviously is like the main pirate enemy. The world government's like the main, I'll just put enemy. I don't really know. Like, I feel like they're both like equal level, but I think the world government is going to be after Blackbeard, but I don't know. It's like, it's really hard to figure out the order between the two. Mm-hmm. But you get what I'm saying, right? Like each of these three factions, you know, they have an ancient weapon, which I think would be really cool. But man, this Caribou, like, it's so crazy, right?
That's fascinating, yeah.
It's so fascinating. Like, I literally talked to my friend about this, and he's like, "I'm going to kill myself." Like, he was that level. He was just like, "Bro." Oh my god.
Nah, if that's true or somewhere in the ballpark, Oda's
cooking.
That's yeah, he's cooking, dude. And we know he is, right? Because he's had this thing in mind for so long that we're about to start getting our minds blown left and right, which we already are.
Yeah.
But this crocodile thing has been so fascinating from the very beginning because, you know, we're first introduced, thanks to Crocodile, to the concepts of the importance, or the first time we found out about the Void Sentry and the poneglyphs. We found out about ancient weapons. Like, we met Robin, which has the biggest connection to that. Like, around that time, Oda came up with those ideas and was like, all right, this is going to be somewhere down the line. We're going to explore this. And if he already had in his mind that Crocodile would have some sort of connection to it, because I always look back at Alabasta and Jaya as, like, you know, Oda once said that he thought he could end the series in 5 years. And so for me, I always looked at Alabasta, and we could go back to volumes 23, 24. I think, no, I'm sorry, it's like from 22 to 25, which is from the moment that the Miss All Sunday and Crocodile conversation happens down in the mausoleum, up until the stuff starts happening around the world in Jaya.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's like the Shanks Whitebeard convo.
Yes.
Type. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like, all that entire section has so much endgame material, you know. We're first introduced to Blackbeard officially in that section. We are first introduced to the Gorosei in that section. We're first introduced to Doflamingo in that section. We first see Whitebeard for the first time in that section. So it's like all these characters that we already had an idea of, and the characters that are going to become important in the endgame. A lot of those concepts starts getting introduced there. And then Skypiea, for me, just like Dressrosa, are two arcs who represent the series as a whole. So it's like, I think that around that time, Oda came up with a lot of the stuff that we're currently seeing like take place. I think in his notes, and I know that that you're a storyteller as well, so you know how this goes, is that we'll have these ideas and we'll draw, and we won't like use them again for years. So I'm pretty sure Oda came up with all these ideas, or some of them. There's a lot of them he came up with later on, but some of these ideas we're seeing now, he must have come up with them back then and was like, I'm gonna have these cooking slowly but surely in the background, and I think Crocodile is one of those. Just like Doflamingo was a slow burn of us being like, what is he doing? Why do we keep seeing his name or his logo attached to these like the little things that you put into your veins, like those IV packets? Why do we see it there? Why do we see it? Why do we see one with Bellamy and Sabaody with, like, in charge of the auctions? Like, then we found out that he was King, the Joker, and we're like, oh, okay, that's what he was cooking. In that same regard, I think he's gonna be doing that with Crocodile, just like you said, where we're gonna find out all these years later, oh, that's why Whitebeard was like, oh, Croc, you're over here, and why everyone in Marineford was just treating him different, like, Croc, you're the one over here, you know, like there's history there. And so when we find out all of that, like what Crocodile's actually cooking, we're gonna see him the same way that we saw like Dofi's story up until this point. We're like, what? Wow. And so that's why I like what you're saying so much in regards to those theories that were brought up, because that just goes into what makes the series so special, which is the long-term storytelling, and not just the storytelling in regards to, you know, we see this crazy theory, or like the Gomu Gomu no Mi, for example, when 1044 dropped. Like, that to me is insane. That's like the Saiyan saga and Super Saiyan revealing 1. That's long-term storytelling at its finest. But what's even more, or what's just as interesting as that, is when Oda does these character reveals or these character twists way down the line that makes so much. Whether he came up with them yesterday or 100 years ago, this stuff like this Crocodile thing that he's had cooking. I mean, bro, we've been speculating, or sections of the community speculating that he's Luffy's mom.
True.
So it's like, obviously there's interest in Crocodile's character, but like, man, if Caribou is not only working for him, but was a member of Rogue Works, woo!
Oh my
Oda's
god.
been cooking for years.
He's been cooking forever.
For years.
Like, what do you put in this?
Seriously, bro.
Oh my god. I genuinely think you were talking a lot of really cool stuff about Doflamingo, especially because like thinking about it's not just him that's been the build up; it's everything he talks about. It's just like
Everything.
end game stuff. Like thinking about it in like, well, I think it was definitely Marineford when he's talking to Moria. He's like, who ordered you to do this? And he's like, someone even higher.
Even higher.
Imagine. He's like, oh yeah, let me drop this super endgame stuff. And that's even the Gorosei, they talk about Eam too, and it's just like, oh my god, like he just sets up these things so it's not even subtle. It's just like, what did he mean by that? And then he doesn't talk about it for like hundreds of chapters. I think it's also really crazy about the ancient weapons too, is that I feel like they very, very, very rarely come up, but every time they do, it makes you think back to the beginning of the story too. It's just like this really cool way of, it's not like literally showing a flashback, but you know, it's just like, oh my god, I remember, you know what I mean? It's like, and thinking about this is, I think, really compelling. Kaido was always talking about why is Kaido at Wano? And here's the crazy part. I don't even think Kaido knew Pluton was at Wano. I don't think he knew. But he just was there because he wanted Joy Boy to defeat him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So he went to this very isolated place with these high borders that no one could really leave from realistically unless you go down this tunnel that only he has access to. And so Joy Boy would have to come to him and attack him. I don't think he even knew about Pluton, like genuinely. It's just very fascinating to me, like that aspect, because I always assumed for a while, oh, he's there because the drunken iron ore or something. That was a huge thing I was thinking, like Onigashima must have a ton of this stuff. And you know, there's a lot of people theorizing about like ores, you know, and like the Oni, maybe they originated from there because, you know, it's obviously in the name. But I think this idea of him only being there because of this Joy Boy thing is a lot more interesting in regards to his character, because it could just be, oh, Pluton is here. But this whole idea of him thinking his destiny essentially is to be defeated by Joy Boy, Luffy, you know, is really cool. And I'm excited to see more of these characters too, because a lot of people were pretty, you know, they're peeved that Kaido didn't get that much of a flashback, you know, compared to like Doflamingo, Big Mom.
For sure. Yeah.
But like, there are still some great villains in One Piece who don't really have flashback. Like, I don't think Crocodile has a flashback.
And when that does come,
it's gonna hit so hard. It's gonna hit so hard.
Dude, NL is still one of my favorite characters, not just villains, characters, and he never got a flashback.
Yeah, because his presence was so menacing all the time, and it's just not even that. It's obviously in a pre-hockey knowledge One Piece thing. He felt untouchable.
Absolutely.
And I think Luffy's just drive to defeat him, and is just Enel's complete.
It was just such a cool concept, dude.
Yeah.
Like Eminem with lightning powers, everybody thinks he's a god, and he's able to potentially read thoughts, and we didn't know that was mantra / observation hockey. It's just so cool. So cool. So many great lines of dialogue. And dude, I wanted to touch on something that that you were talking about, because it just got the brain rolling. So the Onigashima thing, because I was one of the people who was very distraught when Kaido did not get that full flashback. I started that chapter and I was like, this is about to be chapter of the year. Like, I was like, this is about to be chapter 1044 level with Kaido flashback. And when I finished in that chapter, as much as I really, really love that chapter. Like, the Luffy defeating Kaido chapter, I love that chapter. But the Kaido thing, I thought we were going to get more in the flashback. And I've actually come to sort of understand where Oda's going with that. I don't know what he's going to do with character, and maybe we'll get more of him down the line. But in regards to us, I think Oda placed himself in a box where so much of Kaido's backstory is in stuff we're not allowed to see yet. So, for example, I think the truth behind Onigashima, because in every island we always found out, or at least in the ones that he wants us to know, like the importance of the history of the islands, he gave that to us in almost every island. We never got that for Onigashima. And so that makes me think Onigashima, just like the Rocks flashback, are things that Oda is keeping like super hush hush on right now. And I do believe when we see the Onigashima flashback, going to understand why we didn't get all that Kaido stuff. Because I do believe the Onigashima, like the history, whenever we get to the Void Century and we see the creation of Onigashima or whatever it is, that is going to be so deep into the end game that we're going to be like, oh, that's why we didn't get that. Same thing with Rocks, where he's cooking something with this Rocks flashback.
Oh,
like,
definitely.
when we get this flashback, because I've always told people since 957, I think the most interesting part about all of this is going to come down to the protecting the Celestial Dragons plotline. That when we get to that part of the God Valley flashback in the manga and we see who Rocks was, the type of dude that he was, and we lead into that, and because there's so many things that happen there that are going to end up the overall story. But them, like Roger and Garp, teaming up to protect the Celestial Dragons, I think the reasoning for that is going to be so endgame that when we see that, we're going to be like, okay, I get it. Like, Oda was limited. He didn't know what to do. He was like, okay, I can't tell you the history of Onigashima, because this is true endgame. And I can't tell you the Rocks flashback, part of Kaido's flashback, because that's even more endgame. So it's like, okay, and that's why we got the flashback that we did. And I honestly believe when we get the full picture, we're going to be looking at Kaido different. I believe that to be the case. But what do you think about that?
I while you were talking, I think I had like a brain fart in like not a bad way. Yeah. Like I thought about Onigashima, especially in regards to now knowing Wano is this massive city underneath as well, right? And I think it being the ore skeleton is way more likely now. Like that was the thought I just had in my head. And thinking about that, maybe it really was some really important place and it was moved to Wano, you know, it was lifted on top of its head or something.
Yeah.
And then it like broke through or something and it died in Wano. Something like that.
He was the continent puller.
Exactly. And so I was just really thinking about that, but especially in regards to the Celestial Dragon stuff, like there had to have been some absolute insanity that went down there, especially because maybe this is the main thought I have, at least right now, for Rocks, because Kaido is obviously super tied to Rocks, and I feel like that is the main reason we didn't get a flashback, you know, like Doflamingo style, even though the Doflamingo flashback was also the Law flashback, so it's kind of like, you know, you can understand why it was so fleshed out. But even Big Mom's flashback, which was really short considering, you know, what Doflamingo's was very, you know, in detail with her character without even mentioning Rocks a single time. So seeing that this Rocks flashback is inevitable, I think we're just not only going to get more of, you know, Kaido, obviously, since he was like the apprentice and probably the most influenced by Rocks out of anyone.
Yes, agreed.
We're going to see more Big Mom again, which would be cool. And we're going to see maybe some other guy. It would be crazy if Shiki and all them are in it too. That would be absolutely wild. Especially Captain since
John.
Especially since the one girl, Orochi's grandma, I think it's grandma. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, the old Baba.
Yeah, she knew Shiki. You know, there's no way that they did that for no reason. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So seeing all this stuff sort of come together, especially in regards to Onigashima, like you were saying, because she was like, oh, you have to be at Wano, you have to be at Onigashima. I think there's going to be a lot going on there. And I think there's just so much potential. And I don't think it'll be like a Law Doflamingo thing, you know, where it's like a bunch of characters all together. It will be, but you know what I mean. I think we'll have it from one solid perspective, which I don't know who it would exactly be, because, you know, obviously Whitebeard can't be it. Big Mom and Kaido are out of commission for the moment. I hope. Actually, I kind of want to go on that. What do you think about Big Mom and Kaido's like not present? Obviously, they're kind of out of it right now, but their role in the story going forward. Do you think they're going to be like even like alive? Do you think they're alive? Is the first question, I guess.
No, absolutely, dude. And I'm so glad you brought this up because, excuse me, I've been thinking about specifically Big Mom. Kaido, I know for a 100%, he's like endgame importance. Whenever we see Kaido again, that's gonna be a lot of fun whenever he pops up again. And and we see him a part of the biggest war the world's ever seen. I don't know how long it's gonna take for us to see Kaido, but now that we're entering into like the final saga, when we see him again, it's gonna be crazy. But for Big Mom in particular, you know, I think Oda also understands that the fan expectation right now, after her flashback, is that she's gonna be an Elbaf. That is the fan expectation right now. What I want to see is if Oda's actually gonna follow through with that and add Big Mom as a layer to that, or are we gonna see the intent where Big Mom wants to go to Elbaf and maybe she's stopped by someone else? So that's creating another conflict that potentially leads into the end of the story. Because at this point, the individuals who have the poneglyphs, they're going to be chased after by everyone who wants to. And Big Mom, her territory obviously has this. So I wonder how that's going to tie in to, I don't know, cross-skilled with Buggy to go collect the road poneglyphs, or even Blackbeard going to collect the poneglyphs. So it's like, how is that gonna, you know, come into the? Are we gonna see that through a cover that was in itself? It's exciting stuff there. But for Big Mom, because we know her connection to Elbaf is so strong, and we know for a fact if Big Mom shows up, it's gonna be giant Gear 5th Luffy versus Big Mom in a true battle of the giants, which would be so much fun.
So hype.
But if that were to, and of course it's gonna be Usopp's arc, it's a lot of fun there. But in regards to the Loki thing, if Oda really, because like I said, that's not just fan expectation for us and the people who are really into it. Like, you know, there's two different. There's the hardcore, which is us that are always, you know, into it every week. We're discussing it, listening, theorizing. We all think Big Mom will be there. It's not just us. It's also the casual side that believes that Big Mom's going to be an Elbaf. So if that's the case, fan expectation might lead Oda to make her appear. But because he's Mr. Subvert expectations sometimes, I'm honestly not sure. I'm honestly not sure. So, do you think Big Mom's going to be an Elbaf, personally?
I have a lot of ideas about this, honestly. Like, so Big Mom being an Elbaf, there are two main ideas. One is, you know, she'll be there as herself, right? Okay. And the second is that she will revert back to Linlin. Okay. What was she called? She was just normal Linlin, right? Like
Olin? Yeah.
No, not Olin and Wano. I mean, they just called her Linlin when she was little, right? There wasn't like a nickname for Elbaf. I don't remember off the top. But I think that would be a really crazy plot development, is that she sort of, you know the scene in Ratatouille with the one guy, he eats the food and then he gets like whoosh back to his childhood?
Yes.
I think that'll happen when she eats some sembla. That's what I'm thinking might happen.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And she will literally be quote unquote written out of the story, and the giants will accept her again, even though a lot of them won't, like Loki obviously, because they do not like her. But I think it would be a really crazy plot development if that is what happens. I think it would be really cool for her to sort of fully revert to her childhood ways, which I know that would piss so many people off. They would be like, she's such a joke, this is ridiculous. But I think that's personally the best way I think her character could go, because Oda obviously doesn't want to have all these characters at the endgame, because that would be so long. You know, that would be like some... Yeah. I haven't read Naruto, but apparently that war arc is like hundreds of chapters long.
It is long.
Yeah.
with every character in the series in it.
Oh my god, yeah. So I don't know if Oda wants all of the characters in the story, but I think it would be a really cool idea to have her sort of revert to herself, because there's a huge theory that Big Mom was sort of influenced by eating Mother Caramel's soul, and that's what turned her to be sort of malicious and selfish and evil. And Wano, when she lost her memory, she was really nice and peaceful and, you know, really cared about these people. And even in Onigashima, we see that these effects have some long-term things that make her a genuinely good person. You know, like her beating the crap out of Page 1, even though people hated that, you know, because of the mothering mode thing. If they just didn't call it mothering mode, I think people would have been like, let's go, Big Mom, this is awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I genuinely think she should be there because I think the connective tissue between her and Elbaf would be really cool.
Yeah.
And seeing her, I would like to see her fight Giant Luffy. Don't get me wrong. That sounds actually peak fiction. That sounds so crazy, especially since Luffy literally was like, after Kaido, I'm taking you down, and then we see that happen. But I really like the idea of her. Like, I know the amnesia thing pisses people off, but like, I don't know. It feels really good to me, I guess. Mm-hmm. To have her become re-accepted by these people. And obviously they're going to align with Luffy, not Big Mom, but the Giants are going to align with Luffy, Yeah. Because like Hirudin and Dorian Bragi, they have a ton of giant friends.
Yep.
And, they defeated Big Mom. That's probably like, oh my god, you guys are the best ever.
Exactly.
But I do want Big Mom involved. I do, But it's just hard for me to see. Now, what you mentioned is her getting sort of taken aback. Yeah, they're on the way to Elbaf, and then someone sort of reconvenes with her. That would be a crazy Blackbeard plot development because her fruit is so broken, and it's genuinely one of the coolest fruits in One Piece. If Blackbeard's crew got his hands on that, oh my god, I can't even imagine.
Dude, we've all been thinking about that for so long, right? Like Blackbeard's crew versus Big Mom's crew.
Yeah.
And it would be so great to see that. Like, and I know a lot of people want to see Blackbeard versus Katakuri, which would be a fun little clash. Mm-hmm. But Shiryu versus Katakuri, just to show us the level in which Shiryu is, because we don't know where he is on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. We all believe that Ben Beckman is probably very high up on there, for right hand man Yonko, and obviously Zoro's gonna be very high, and so we see, but we don't know where Shiryu's gonna be. We all expect him to be that dude because he's under Blackbeard.
Very
but
true.
I think a great showcase would be what he would do against Katakuri. Now, the Katakuri, I myself am a big Katakuri fan. Mm-hmm. We don't want to see my dog go down, without a fight. So obviously it would be legendary to see Katakuri versus Shiryu. Oda doesn't have that much time left in the story. So I don't know how much he would dedicate to this, but if he were to just give us just at least one chapter, at least like one, and I'm not saying in just one chapter, like let's just say 2 pages one chapter, 5 pages in another, 7 pages in another, like as long as he gives us a chapter's time, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Where we see Big Mom, like you said, utilizing an amazing ability against Blackbeard. Then we see, the rest of the crew come in, then the rest of Big Mom's family has to come in, and they're trying to defend, and now since, we see like the Caesar Clown and the Germa stuff that is happening that is going to potentially lead into some craziness down the line too. But Katakuri having to defend this territory and alongside Big Mom and the rest of the Charlotte family, and we will get to see how much they like all of them actually working together. And Big Mom is like, you know what? We all have to stick together because last time we let that Straw Hat Brat run through every single last one of us because we were all separated. So the only way we're doing this is if we do this together right here, right now. Children, follow me, let's get this. And they still lose. I think that would be one of the coolest moments, and it would not take away from Big Mom, because coming after that, we would see, oh my goodness, the Blackbeard pirates are truly on that level. It's not that Big Mom and them got shafted. It's just that this is the potential final antagonist of the story that just did this to them. So I think that the Blackbeard thing, we all want it to happen, obviously, but the potential is actually there. Why not? Why not have that as a showcase of not only just strength, but of intent? Like the Blackbeard pirates pulling up on another emperor and be like, no, we got this. We don't have to do the regular opportunistic stuff we used to do in the past. We have the fruits. We have the power to do this. Big Mom, let's go take care of this. If Law and Kid could do it, I could. Let's go. And so I like that. I like that potential possibility.
Oh, I definitely agree. I think this is the craziest part. You're saying that they're not taking the opportunity. This is the moment to take down Big Mom. Her crew is so weak. Her territory is destroyed. She lost her position. Everything is south for Big Mom. The stocks are way down. And seeing this, Blackbeard's like, oh, not only does she have a road poneglyph, She has a third eye tribe person. Like, bro, there's so much to go into this. It's just like, oh my god.
Oh, Pudding would get captured.
Pudding would get captured. Like, this is like that. Have you read the fan chapter? Like, someone drew out a whole chapter, and it's Blackbeard's crew versus Katakuri. It's awesome. Would absolutely recommend you read it. I've not seen that,
but that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and so Katakuri's fighting like Van Augur, Burgess, and Shiryu like all together. It's so sick.
Yo, Katakuri's a G if he does that.
He's so
that'd be pure hype.
But here's the thing I need to see for Katakuri, right? I need to see him fall on his back and then get up, because Luffy never stopped getting up, and Katakuri's changed. That's peak.
That's peak. Dude, the Katakuri would go up my list even higher than he already is.
Yeah.
If that happens.
Like, Katakuri, he's a top 10 undebatably for me. He's a top 10.
Yeah, no, he's such a GOAT character.
But that moment is all I need. It's like the ultimate, like, full circle type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But genuinely, at first I was thinking you were talking about Big Mom is on the sea. You know what I mean? So a lot of her crew is still there, presumably.
Yeah.
A lot of them are on the sea, you know, and they fight against Blackbeard. And then I thought, oh, what would be a crazy matchup is Smoothie versus like San Juan Wolf, and she like juices San Juan Wolf. That would be so crazy.
Yeah. Smoothie finally does something. And
True.
That would be cool.
True.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
She's really cool in the Pirate Warriors game, and that's it.
Yeah, through that. It's like, why couldn't you be doing this in the actual series?
Why couldn't you just throw hands like this all the time?
Facts.
But there are so many characters that would be so cool for this position, and especially with the dichotomy of Big Mom is the life-bringing thing, and Blackbeard is the destroyer of life. You know, it's right there, and obviously there's symbolism between like Ace and Blackbeard. You know, Sun, darkness. Luffy and Blackbeard. You know, Sun, God, darkness. But life and death is literally their thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's I don't know. I just think that'd be really great. And if Blackbeard does manage to take down Big Mom and maybe even kill Big Mom for her fruit, you know that Katakuri's becoming the head of the pirate crew, and they're joining with Luffy in the endgame.
That's for sure.
That is
no
that has to be what happens.
Dude, Blackbeard giving life to things like
Imagine.
he's Giorno. Oh
Imagine.
My goodness, dude.
Ugh. And that's such a crazy thing, because so many people were thinking Blackbeard's gonna get like a Zoan ability, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's either
which I can still definitely see happening.
Oh, definitely,
for
definitely.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it could be the Cerberus thing, you know, because 3 skulls, you know, death symbolism, you know. And then the Kraken theory, which is, you know, again, like symbolic of like the death, but like ocean related too, you know, it's piratey.
Exactly.
I do personally think if Blackbeard gets Pluton, which is obviously like Hades, it'd be cooler if it was like a Cerberus thing, you know, for a further connection. Mm-hmm. Also because Akainu has an attack where he sends out lava hellhounds, and Blackbeard and Akainu are meant to be like the exact opposite. You know, Akainu's absolute order and Blackbeard's total anarchy, and they both somehow have a hellhound attack. That'd be pretty cool in my opinion.
Yeah, that's dope. I never thought about that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But genuinely, like, if he somehow brings life to things, he's like, oh, I could just make a Kraken. Oh, I could just make Hellhound. You know what I mean? That'd be really crazy. Oh, man.
Dude, I'll tell you this. And now that you say that about possibly Big Mom, I think Big Mom's Gecko Moria thing. I just recently reread Thrill of Bark. I love that arc so much, by the way. Like, I remember when I first read through that arc. Well, I'll talk about this in a video sometime in the future. But I really have come to love that arc, especially in most recent rereads. But Gecko Moria's ability, in the right hands, is extremely dangerous. So I've been thinking a lot about whether it's Gecko Moria himself or whether they already offed him and they gave it to somebody, whoever has that ability. Blackbeard having the ability to put shadows within people who are no longer alive is insane to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even want to fathom the idea of like we talk about this Big Mom scenario, right? Like I'm just using Big Mom as an example, just to show you how terrifying this could be.
Yeah.
That if Big Mom were to die and he puts in the soul of something else into Big Mom's body, not only would that be crazy because Big Mom was the one who put souls into other objects, so the fact that somebody's putting a soul inside of her is kind of wild.
Oh
but
my God.
to me, that like Blackbeard having Gecko Moria or somebody with that ability gives it that potential, where it's like, wait a minute, bro. Because Gecko Moria, he had these, you know, Ryuma and all these crazy individuals under him. He didn't have Big Mom. All right, he didn't have Big Mom, so it's like Big Mom or someone like an Oars or another figure like that he could keep with him at all times, and they don't die. That's scary, bro.
Oh
like Blackbeard could potentially have like a crazy endgame army if he really does have Gecko Moria, or at the very least that ability under him. Insane.
I'm like cheesing so hard right now, bro. Like I'm just like the second you're like bringing up that Big Mom thing, I'm like, oh my God, imagine.
Yeah, man. It's crazy.
Oh my God, like the potential. I at least hope Moria's alive. I at least hope, because Perona is gonna be going after Moria, and that's why I think she wasn't in the Cross Guild chapter. I think she's already going after Moria.
I agree with that.
And I want to see Perona. Like, Perona's ability is also high-key broken. Like, so high-key broken. So not only all of these crazy Thriller Bark abilities are all Blackbeard's. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And of course it's in the arc where it's about, like, zombies and death and everything. It's like, oh, of course. Of course Blackbeard's getting that.
Oh, man, dude. Man, Mihawk and Zoro would have... Oh, man. Dude, if they were to do anything to Perona, I honestly believe that Mihawk and Zoro would both be pissed. Because they were both with her, obviously, Mihawk for longer, but Zoro for exactly those 2 years. But it's like, I can't even imagine. Man, I mean, I love Perona, so I don't want to do... But if something has to happen to a story, then I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But don't do it, Oda. Don't do it.
No, Oda, don't. The fandom will literally, like, die. That, like... Yeah. Oh my God. That would be, like...
We love Perona too much. Don't do it. Man.
Exactly. She's too funny. She's too... Yeah. Oh, man. No, Hogback you can kill, though. He can
yeah, Hogback. The only thing he serves is for a foil for Chopper anyway. You know, Chopper will one-shot him now.
True.
Let's get him out of here.
Oh my God. Now, honestly, Thriller Bark on the reread is so crazy to see, because it's all this New World symbolism, and Big Mom is, like, first foreshadowed in that arc, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if what you're saying is true, is Big Mom's now being used by Moria's power, it feels so full circle.
Yeah.
Which is so great. Now, if Kaido has something to do with it as well, that would be insane. You know, it's really full circle. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, bro. And that's the reason why they got... Because we all expected Gecko Moria to show up at Wano. And so if that's the reason why it didn't happen... Oh, man.
I have a thought. And this was like... this is a huge tinfoil theory I had. And it's kind of trash, but like, I want your... it's trash, but I want your thoughts.
Okay.
Alright, so... You know how all the stuff about the Fire Festival is all about ancestors and, you know, being able to, you know, communicate with them in some fashion, right?
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people, when Odin showed up again, were like, oh my God, it's really him, when, you know, obviously it wasn't. I was thinking, imagine if Moria was there at Wano, and then all the ancestors were given to Luffy, you know, like a Nightmare Luffy 2.0 type deal. And they helped Luffy defeat Kaido. That's what I personally thought might have happened, you know, in the arc if Moria was to be there.
I remember pre G5, there was quite a few of comments that I saw that was similar to that. I remember, I think it was my boy JB. Joe Boy Theories, if I'm not mistaken, he brought up like the Force Ghost thing, and from that moment on, like the ideas started popping, like you said, for something like that. And you know something, if something like that would have happened in this arc, because I know Oda's a big Final Fantasy. I know how much he loves Final Fantasy VI, and how that has influenced like the beginning of the series. And we're just based on what it feels like, right? Like it really does feel like FF6 had like just a massive effect on the series. So if he also played Final Fantasy X, which I do believe he did, one of the big things in that game is exactly that, you know. And I feel like if there was any arc to do it, it would have been that one, where, like you said, the ancestors, all the individuals, literally not just of Wano in the present, but everyone who was ever in Wano, and all like go within Luffy in order to help him defeat Kaido. I could have seen that being a possibility pre-Gear 5. So your tinfoil theory, I would have been down with that. I would have been down with that if it would have gone down that route, because I think it would have made sense thematically. Honestly.
Yeah, because a lot of the arcs, you know, like Skypiea, for example, they're literally praying to Luffy to defeat them, and you know, obviously the normal people of Wano didn't even know what was happening, but the ancestors, they were literally in the air, they're floating around. They would have seen it and been like, I'm not gonna let our present generation suffer the same way you made us suffer, something crazy like that. That would have been cool, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I personally was so on board with this idea. I thought, like, oh my god, Pluton, like this is where it gets like trash now. I thought Pluton was gonna be like Momo, because obviously Shirahoshi was you know, also Poseidon, right? So I'm like, oh, it might be Momo. And Momo's ability was talking to the dead, since Pluton, Hades, and all that, and he'd see the ancestors, which is also a kind of voice of all things thing, like a Zunisha, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of trash, but
that's
like,
interesting.
You know,
no, that is interesting. Like I said, because of how the influences, right? Like it once again, going back to Final Fantasy X, like that would have I could have seen Momo in that situation where he has a special ability nobody else has, and because of that, in this generation, he would be the ancient weapon, quote unquote, and this would be, you know what? Once again, I applaud it. I would have been down with that had it because the thing is, right, when executed correctly, when it's not executed correctly, like you said, it's gonna be trash. But when executed correctly, I think that's a really cool idea.
I thought the main reason that was gonna happen was because I thought all the scabbards were gonna die. I was fully on board with that theory, because I was like, okay, something horrific has got to happen to these people, except Kinemon. So then Kinemon could die separately, which is really great that they had at least that scene where Kinemon thought about how he was like Momo's dad. You know, that was perfect. That was a perfect scene, and then he stayed alive. But you know, besides that, if Momo had like a scene where not only he's saying goodbye to all the scabbards, but also like his father and his mother, because their ghosts would be there, I think that would be really powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong, I am happy that the scabbards are alive. Well, at least, you know, for the most part, you know. And that we did, you know, get Momo and Kinemon having this great send-off with the Straw Hats. That was, oh my god. I got kind of emotional with that scene. Yeah.
Dude, I teared up.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like...
Dude, 10 years.
10 years. It's like, thinking about that, like, Law has been with us for so long, and obviously Law is, you know, not in that scene, but still, like, the same effect. Like, this arc that has been going forever is like, it's over, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And so, like, a lot of people were like, oh, the play thing was kind of like, what's it called? Like, kind of ego-y, and I'm like, I don't know, I mean... I could see
the art together so well.
Exactly.
You know?
I could see how it's like ego-y. You know, it's like, oh, this long story, years in the making, is over. You know, I get it. But the fact that arc started with the play, and now it ended, not started with the play, but, you know, the curtains opened up. You know what I mean?
The curtains opened, yeah.
And then it ends with this cool sort of like monologue about the events that happened. It felt very grand. It felt like this is going to go down in like in history, you know, for a really long time for these people. And it's just, it felt really cool to me. Especially, I think the thing that made it the best, probably the best moment of the chapter for me, is Luffy giving Momo the flag. That was so, oh my god.
That was so awesome.
It was so
he
awesome.
He called him a brother, dude.
Little bro.
I think that was the first, the only other person besides Ace and Sabo. He called him brother.
Yeah.
A brother.
And
like,
you know what? You know what that made me think about a lot? Is when Whitebeard called Odin little bro. That's exactly what it made me think about too.
That's true.
Showing the parallels to like great pirates, because Luffy, he's not the pirate king. He's a great pirate right now.
Yep.
But oh man, it's just that moment. It's like the parallels. I'm not like one of those people who's like, One Piece has to have all these parallels with like Roger's generation and Luffy's, but like that moment, it was like, oh yeah.
Dude, the fact that Wano is now his territory is one of the coolest things ever for me.
Yeah.
Like, this place that everyone is so afraid to go to is now under our banner, because we actually came here of our own volition and did what nobody else wanted to do. And because of that, our reward is that this is our territory. It feels like a Dynasty Warriors game or something. You know, this is ours now. And that's so dope to me. And that was one of the parts of that chapter that it just, I remember whenever Fishman Island came around and Luffy was trying to, you know, take that territory from Big Mom. He was like, yo, screw you, dude. Like, yo, we'll get to you eventually. And the fact that was pretty much what set up this entire saga was in that arc. And to see that he actually made Wano his territory is just, that's one of the coolest things ever. That's one of my, it's so good.
Yeah, and just knowing that this is going to have like that ripple effect, especially after he finds the One Piece, obviously, because the world government's going to be like, you are now prime enemy #1, forget the revolutionaries, this is over. But seeing this, obviously Dressrosa is going to follow suit, Fishman Island's going to follow suit.
Exactly.
Alabasta,
eventually,
Alabasta.
Vivi gets back into power.
I was going to say Drum Island, but that's not what it's called. It's Sakura, I think it's Sakura Kingdom, I think now.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yep. That. And then like even more, like Greenbit, I think is a separate place as well. I'm not entirely sure. Is that like a separate kingdom?
Yeah, all those places are going to be under the goat.
Yeah. Maybe, honestly, probably even Amazon Lily. Probably.
Oh, absolutely. What? Yo,
yeah.
Hancock's going to be like, I belong to no one but
Luffy. But
Luffy. Like, yo, my husband, if anybody even gets close to me, my husband's going to get shot. Dude, something I want to see so bad, now that we're talking about it, is for Hancock to put up the territory. People pull up to her and like, oh, you're a part of Luffy's alliance? And she's like, nah, that's my man.
Oh,
like,
imagine.
If y'all even touch me, you're gonna have to see that man.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, my bad. I didn't know. Well, hey, and it's gonna be all in the newspaper. Hancock is Straw Hat Luffy's wife. Right everywhere. Right.
That'd be hilarious.
That'd be so much fun, man. I hope Oda does something like that. Yeah, that'd be cool.
I wonder, again, like this is a very obvious like question in, retrospect to Luffy and Hancock, Kobe and Hancock, and they both love Luffy. Like, how do you think that's going down? I feel like Boa getting captured is the way the story is progressing, but I genuinely don't know, because Boa and Luffy, Boa and Kobe are such Luffy stans. Like, I feel like something might happen.
So I'm gonna connect to Sabo for a second. I think, I don't know, obviously this next chapter could be anything, but whenever we go back to Sabo, and eventually we're going to see where he is and what he looks like, because I do believe Jewelry Bonnie messed with her age. So I do think Vivi looks either younger or older, and I think Sabo looks either younger or older too. And especially if Sabo's gonna die at the end of the series, I think it would be cool if Sabo, like, we see him right now with like a goatee, like how he would look like when he's 40 or something. He just looks super fresh. Now, this would be a way for him to avoid everyone who's chasing him and all that stuff. So, in that same regard, if they're near Amazon Lily and they're with Hancock, and what we have is Sabo with Jewelry Bonnie with Vivi, and then there's also the potential that Hancock is with him too, except she's either younger / older. That would be an interesting Impel Down squad in and of itself, where now you have another plot line where Sabo, in an attempt to get to either wherever it is they're trying to go to, there's 3 people with them that have the ability to like really help them out here. The 2 princesses, or actually 3, if Bonnie is the princess of the Sorbet Kingdom that we don't know of.
Oh, I think she's the queen, right?
Oh, so if she's the queen, then now you have the future queen of Alabasta, the queen of the Sorbet Kingdom, and the queen of Amazon Lily, with the Flame Emperor, aka the man that everyone sees as the biggest threat on the planet right now. So if let's just say Giulio Bonnie's ability goes up in haywire, and Sabo goes back to being Sabo, and so do the other 3, then Sabo will be known as the individual who is taking 3 queens hostage.
Oh my god.
And I think that would be a really cool way to go about this. But if they are not together, I do believe the Hancock situation and the Kobe situation inevitably is going to connect to that, I believe. Now, if that actually ends up not happening, of course, then, Mr. Break ankles himself. But I do believe that that it's going to... that those 2 plot lines, the Kobe Hancock thing and the Sabo potentially with those other 2 thing, are going to meet up in some way, shape, or form. And when that does happen, we have the potential for a fun Impel Down like squad with Sabo and those individuals. But what do you think about that? Like, what do you think's going to happen with Hancock and maybe even potentially the Revolutionary Army? Or I'm sorry, with Sabo. Because the thing is, right, before you go, I do believe that Sabo is going to speak to the Revolutionary Army in a sort of codec, Metal Gear Solid type of way where they won't understand. Like, the Marines are going to be listening into this conversation. They're not going to know what the hell... Like, what? Alpha 9 or Delta? What? Like all this jargon that they're not going to understand. Where Sabo is going to be speaking to them directly, and it's going to let them know a location. That's what I believe. Sabo's going to let them know a location that only they're going to understand. And maybe it's a misdirection thing. So, to the fans, we hear Sabo saying, I'm at something Fishman Island or something Alabasta. And so you're gonna see like Revolutionary shocked expression, the Marine shocked expression, and they're gonna be like, go tell Akainu, tell them all to go to Alabasta. But what they don't know is maybe like the first part is whenever they finish the conversation, no, they're not at Alabasta. What he actually meant was they're like 2 islands over from Alabasta. They're actually here. And so now we have a misdirection thing where they send their entire fleet over to Alabasta. Their entire fleet to Fishman Island, or whatever it is. And the Revolutionary Army is actually moving to where Sabo actually is. And I think that would be so interesting to play with military tactics in that regard. But I want to hear your thoughts on this, because this Sabo thing is so interesting right now. So many things can happen.
Oh my god. You are spitting some hot flames right now, I'm not gonna lie. So I was thinking that Sabo is so you're talking about like some super mind game stuff, right?
Yes.
I feel like it definitely could happen, but I thought about it in a totally different way. So I'm gonna shout out Eden's again, because Eden's told me about this whole Bonnie thing, and I was like, oh, this is flames. This is some absolutely phenomenal stuff. Because obviously Bonnie and Sabo love Kuma. They both love Kuma, so they're going to be working together. So Bonnie changed Sabo's age before the phone call, right? So that's why we only saw "It's me, Sabo" at the end. You know what I mean? And so the Marines are going to be like, wait, what? This isn't Sabo. Wait, why? This voice is totally different. Because Sabo's either going to be a little kid, and they're going to be like, oh, it's just a prank call, or something like that. Or it's going to be an old man. And I was thinking, okay, I really like this idea, but why Bonnie? And then I thought to myself, because you mentioned it as well, the 40 to 60 drawings. Oda had to have done those for Sabo for a reason, because he was only doing them with the crew, and not like anyone outside of the crew except Sabo. And I'm like, okay, there might be something, there with it. And then I was thinking, you brought up something crazy, in a good way, obviously, with the Hancock VV thing too, and then being like a whole squad, and that's how he, got such a negative reputation. That'd be really sick. And if they do an Impel Down 2.0, I think we need to see some absolute craziness. Now, if this is in Marie-Joie, like a Marie-Joie Impel Down, sort of like some Fisher Tiger stuff, imagine, okay, so this is a theory I've had for a long time, and I thought about it. It's so strange. Why was Arlong not an Impel Down? That's something I've thought about for such a long time. You know what I mean? He is the first big bad of One Piece. And then it all clicked once the Fishman Island stuff happened. Arlong wasn't sent to Impel Down. Arlong was sent to Marie-Joie to be a slave, because they just think the Sun Pirates, besides Jinbei obviously, they just think the Sun Pirates, are slaves.
Oh, I know where you're going. Oh, yeah.
So we're going to see Arlong back in the story getting freed by Sabo, the Flame Emperor. And this will be like a second happening of the Nika Sun God freeing the slave story. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it'll be so crazy because Arlong, well, I guess Fisher
is saved by humans.
Yes.
Oh!
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, dude. I genuinely love it. I do.
And I think the best part is, Arlong has to come back to the story. He has to. He's had this thing of showing up every 500-ish chapters. That's kind of his shtick. And sorry. So what I was thinking.
I love the puns.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is that Arlong is gonna see Nami and Jinbei working together, and just imagine the look on his face. He'll be like, "You're working with humans," and then they're just like, "What?" And it'd be crazy. This is like maybe one of the wildest things that might ever happen in One Piece. Like Nami forgives Arlong or something crazy like that. You know what I mean? Or like something like that. Like obviously she wouldn't. She shouldn't. But at least she knows the context and is like, I at least understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because unlike Hody Jones, who was just like a pretty big degenerate for the most part, Arlong was directly influenced by this dude who freed all the slaves from Marie-Joie, and then he was freed by the slaves from Marie-Joie. And it might be crazy if Arlong is like a changed man as well from this kind of like Who's Who, where he had to believe in something. And then I hope he's not going to be like kind of weird about it, like something like, "Oh, Sabo, he's the best," something like that. But like,
yeah, for sure.
I think it would be a really cool interaction to see those three talking to each other, for sure.
I love it.
But Arlong getting saved by humans is basically the main thing. It's just like, it would be such a great moment, I think, for his character, because he's been so hateful the whole time. But then we understand why he's been hateful, and then maybe, I don't know what will happen. Maybe they are trying to free him and that he won't accept it, but then,
Bro, Mio's guard is there too, man.
What a legend, bro.
Yeah, the straight up legend that was changed, the most changed individual that we saw from being a pure celestial dragon Flagnard to what we saw in chapter 107, and it's like, if Mio's guard were to be the reason, like their guide, let's just say, right? And we were to see that, like, what took place, like what Queen Otohime did is having direct consequences of what's happening here. Like, that would be so good, man. Man, this is like, if we were to actually do this escape from Marijoa plot line, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how you do it.
The Millsguard guide is a great what's it called? Great angle for it as well.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Man,
there's just
a lot of fun possibilities.
Yeah, I am a bit worried though, because I feel like we definitely have to go back to Impel Down at some point, because Doflamingo's gotta be at the end. Yeah, he has to be,
for sure.
And also my guy Bon Clay, we gotta free my guy up,
Yeah,
because
I do believe though the Doflamingo thing, you can we can show that, like, we can show somebody showing up at Impel Down, that assassin guy, remember from back then, or someone going there and he gets freed, and the next time we see him in the endgame. Like, I can see something like that. I don't think we have to go there ourselves.
Oh, definitely.
But I do I love the idea of Doflamingo. I mean, you've seen it too, right? About the guild, like Dofi Cross Guild.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah.
Whatever ends up happening, Dofi has to be in that final arc. He has to see the chaos happening with own two eyes.
He was the one who instigated the New Age so long.
Yes.
And then he basically started it by him getting defeated, and now it's just like it's here. He has to lay victim to this. He has to see it.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Exactly.
I think another thing. I think genuinely this is the way they might go about it. The Revolutionary Army might go to Impel Down to free, Bon Clay and the new Kama floor. I think that would be a really cool angle for it.
That would be great.
And then somehow along the way, Doflamingo gets freed as well. I think that would be pretty great. Maybe he slips through with I don't know how he'd do it because he can't use his devil fruit, but somehow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So much greatness.
Man, my mind is blown right now, man. There's a lot of greatness. Greatness.
I think one other thing I want to bring up real quick is the Croco-chan thing being brought up again in the last chapter. I feel like it's fitting because right after the new Kama, I'm straight back to Crocodile. I saw this fantastic theory that I'm gonna tell you. I sadly forget who made it. I sadly do, but it was so sick. And the theory is that Crocodile is working for the Revolutionary Army. That is the theory, right?
Okay.
So basically, the Revolutionary Army wanted Crocodile to take over Alabasta because they hate, monarchy, all that stuff. But especially Alabasta because of the descendants from the 20 original, people who went up and started the Celestial Dragons, all that. So they wanted him to take it over. And there was a lot that went into this thing. It was pretty insane. But this concept I find really fascinating because if Vivi is the one who is, saved by Sabo, which is what a lot of people presume, and Crocodile would have been working with the revolutionaries, it would have been this huge thing. Now, unfortunately, the theory is not, it's not going to happen because he's doing his own thing now. And I doubt he will be connected. But I thought that concept was really fascinating for a while because there was a lot that went into it. Like Crocodile being an Impel Down and not wanting to escape until he noticed Ivankov was with Luffy and then he wanted to escape. You know what I mean?
Ah, yes.
And then Ivankov talking about the Croco-chan thing. And then if Ivankov is escaping, Crocodile's like, oh, the revolutionaries are basically doing something now. So now I can escape. And it even happened in Crocodile's cover story where he's able to go free with all the rest of Baroque works. And he's like, nah. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah.
It was pretty intriguing. I'm not going to lie. And especially so because obviously Ivankov learns that Luffy is, Dragon's son. But Crocodile doesn't even know that. Crocodile just assumes, they're on the move. And then the second Crocodile learns Luffy is Dragon's son in Marineford, he starts protecting Luffy all the time. It's crazy.
Man, that's interesting.
There was a lot brewing in this thing, and I was like, okay, you know what? I did not think about this once ever while reading One Piece, but I believe it. I firmly do believe it, and I don't know if it will happen. If it somehow is true, this dude deserves so much credit. I will try and find it and link it in the description because amazing theory in my opinion. I truly, truly enjoyed it. But
dude, that's the first time I've ever heard that. And the more you talked about it, the more I just started clicking and I was like, man, that would have been a really cool theory. Dude.
Yeah, I hope it still can come true. I don't know how much because of this Cross Guild thing. He's re-entered the story officially.
Yeah.
But man, that would have been crazy. Because imagine they're at Kamabaka Kingdom, right? Mm-hmm. And Vivi is there, and then right next to Vivi, Crocodile's sitting there, and it's just man,
that would have been nuts.
That would have been great. And they have to work together to stop the world government. Imagine.
Nuts. Oh man.
Yeah.
Man, either way, the Crocodile greatness is gonna happen. Either that theory was gonna happen, or what we got.
Yeah, and I'm totally fine with the Cross Guild. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love how he's like the brains of it. Mihawk's the muscle.
Me too. Yes, it's so classic, like classic cartoons stuff.
Yeah.
Like Crocodile has the big cigar. He's the brains. He's taking advantage of Buggy. Like he lended him money just to take advantage of him. And then he's working with Mihawk. The first person he called was Mihawk. He was like, "Yeah, man, you want to work together, dude? Like, I know you're a free agent." And it was, I loved it. I love the idea. Like, cross-skill as a concept is just so good.
Yeah, it's a great way to integrate all these pre-time skip villains who are like really powerful, and to put them back into the story. It's like it feels so effortless too. It's just like, yeah, of course Crocodile was planning something. And of course Mihawk started the marine hunting thing. I personally thought Buggy started the marine hunting thing because Buggy is such a coward, and he's like, now I don't have to deal with any of this.
Me too. I thought the same thing.
Yeah. But nah, I think the marine hunting Mihawk stuff is just, it's so good. It's
so epic,
so
man.
Good.
Like, it's gonna be so cool when we actually get to see their bounties. Like, if we are gonna see like the marine bounties, and Mihawk's just like, man, this is this is too low. Like, do I really have to work this hard for this amount of money for that guy?
Yeah, and Buggy's right next to him. Like, if you take all of them out, I'm gonna run out of money.
Yeah, for real. He's like, yo, please, I'm begging you, just take out this admiral, please.
Please.
Please. And Mihawk's like, yo, I can do that in my sleep. Like,
oh my god, imagine it's like, you know those admirals that like aren't really admirals, but they have the admiral name scheme?
Yeah.
What if it's like, oh, please take out the one guy, Brown Pig. Please take him out. And then Mihawk's like, this dude's a joke.
Mihawk's just like, yo, I could look at him and he'll be gone. That's all it takes.
Oh my god. You really think I'm gonna deal with Helmeppo? You really think that's in my caliber?
Yo, real quick, before we finish tonight, now that we're on a roll of so many different theories, I've been thinking about something a lot since chapter 1044, and there's 3 characters that fascinate me the most here in regards to this. I know people bring Mihawk into the, I don't know if people bring Cavendish into the, but there's 3 characters that fascinate me so much, and that is Luffy, Doflamingo, and Im. And in regards to these 3 characters, have had a focus on either showing or not showing their eyes. And I remember when Gear 5th was revealed, and now especially after the bounty poster, specifically, we see the white hair, we see Luffy laughing, but just like in the 1044 spread, we don't see his eyes. And Oda specifically, knowing how iconic the chapter would be, ended that chapter with us seeing Luffy's eyes for the first time. Now thanks to the merchandise, we know that he and Im have the same colored eyes. We haven't seen Dofi's yet. I strongly believe that Dofi may have the same eyes as Luffy and Instant Messenger Sama. Now I know, like I said, Cavendish is usually brought into this and Hakuba and Mihawk. But the reason why I bring up these 3 is because if Dofi is truly, if the reason why Oda never showed his eyes is because there's going to be some sort of endgame importance, then to me, because I know in the bounty posters that we just got, we've all been talking about, oh, Frankie's going to be like the Sanji here, where that Thousand Sunny thing's going to be endgame importance. And we remember when Oda was drawing the Straw Hats at the end of their lives, he drew them as a ship. And it's like all this funny, hilarious stuff, and obviously it's going to have some sort of importance. But the character for me that I think is going to have the biggest endgame consequence for their bounty is the main character. Whenever I saw Luffy's bounty in 1053 and it was covering his eyes, I was like, oh, so they're really going to go through, because I guarantee had the picture been taken with Luffy's eyes open, he would be the most sought after individual on the planet. But even though he still is, he's still gonna be a very sought after. But if his eyes were open, I think we would have gotten the reaction. Everyone who knows about the Void Sentry, like let's just say Dofi potentially knowing, Dragon, Shanks, all these characters, they would have seen that eye, and it would just been like this collective so this is what we're heading toward. And I do believe when we cut to Doflamingo and he sees the Gear 5th transformation, it's gonna lead him to start connecting dots that maybe he like had an idea of, and he's gonna connect it to National Treasure, which we of course now we believe is the Straw Hat. It's like, so you really are connected to him or her, like whoever Instant Messenger Sama is. And that's when we start cooking the eye plotline, because I do strongly believe at this point there's no way that and at the very least Luffy, even if Dofi's not a part of it, if I strongly believe that and Luffy have the same, and maybe even for the same reason, like whatever was caused there, whatever Luffy's awakening does that causes that eye to come out, Instant Messenger Sama is in that at all times, as we saw from his just regular eye color. We saw them go up there, and that was the only part of their body we saw was the eye. And so because of the focus on that, and because I know Oda likes hiding things plain sight, I want to get your thoughts on that, because I haven't had an opportunity to talk about that with someone in this type of discussion yet. What do you think about that, like, possibility of just all of that having endgame importance when it comes to the eye?
So I definitely think there has to be some sort of connective tissue with Eam being such a mysterious figure who's been presumably looming for, like, I don't want to say like the immortality thing off rip, but I feel like that has to be it. Like, that's at least my instant thought. You know what I mean?
I'm right
like,
there with you on that.
There's to be some sort of aspect of godliness, if I'm gonna be so upfront about it, relating to these characters, because Eam is the god of the gods. That is literally what Eam is. And Luffy, he is so strong and free to do whatever he pleases. He's literally like a god in his own right. In the complete other aspect, sort of, he has this godly power, while Eam has this godly authority. You know, there's sort of like two sides of the same coin, but like it's like two aspects of the same coin. That makes more sense then, because Eam is obviously probably going to be the most order focused character in the entire series, even more than Akainu, you know. So I personally do think there has to be something related with these eyes, though, because there's just been a massive sort of grouping of these characters. Like you said, even Mihawk is involved. Maybe it's like, the way I think about it is it's an aspect of like, you've literally reached, like, because Luffy even said, this is my peak, you know, like this is like your the peak way of you, the peak that you can be, and then you get those eyes. Essentially, that would be why Mihawk would have it as well. You know, he's the world's greatest swordsman, so he has those eyes as well. Doflamingo, I personally don't think he would have those eyes. There has to be something with them, but I personally think that he had the sunglasses, sort of to show like how his view of the world is different. You know, stuff like that. You know, and that's why at the end of the arc, Luffy breaks the glasses, and you see it. You literally see the one panel of the crack, and it's like it's over.
That's when you knew.
Yeah, and there are some other characters I would say that have it as well. Like, personally, I think Zunisha kind of has very similar eyes as well.
That's true.
And maybe that's like he's reached the peak like wisdom or something like that. And Hakuba, I'd also go with like the peak strength, because obviously Hakuba is just literally built different and like killed everyone in the arena in like one swing. But I think it has something to do with you reaching like the pinnacle that you can be. That's at least my personal thought on it at the moment. Because Eam is such a mysterious character, obviously, where that we just know they have this unbridled control that even the Gorosei are like, oh, you have complete authority over everything else, you know? And that's so crazy to think about, because the Gorosei we've known for literally almost the entire series when we think about it. And it's just like, even they have someone that they are, you know, under. It's sort of like the pirate ladder type of thing. Like, even Luffy, he's literally God, yet still Shanks and all them are above it.
Or above him.
It's crazy. But genuinely, I do think there's definitely a connection with the eyes. Like, I don't know if it's specifically just Luffy and Eam. Like I was saying, I think Mihawk and all them might have some sort of aspect in this as well. But
For sure.
if I'm thinking Eam, I think it might have something to do with like wisdom as well, or knowledge perhaps, because I don't know how strong I think Eam is gonna be, you know, because
Yeah, no, I got you.
I feel like they're more of a silent manipulator type character, you know, kind of like Blackbeard in a sense, where they have all this control and knowledge of, oh, if I do this, this will happen. That's why I'm kind of linking this together with the frozen straw hat thing. You know, they must understand the importance of the straw hat, and seeing Luffy, you know, they just know the big picture, and that's maybe why they have the eyes. That would be pretty crazy, but I don't know if I believe that. It's a bit hard to wrap my head around fully at the moment because Eam is such a, you know, mysterious character.
Oh yeah, the most mysterious character.
Oh yeah, maybe. See, but Rox is there too. But I think we know more about Rox than Eam.
Yeah, we know more. Yeah, Eam, we just know a name.
Yeah,
and a title.
Name and a big crown.
That's right.
But I generally do think that there is something brewing with the eye connection for sure.
Yeah.
I just hope that it's not like strength related personally, because I don't know. I just don't want Eam to be strong. That sounds like bad for the story, because like Eam is like the presumable final boss if we're not thinking of Blackbeard.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it would be crazy for the person to be at the top of this world to just know things and not be strong. It's sort of like, have you ever played Fallout New Vegas?
Yes.
Like Mr. House. Like Mr. House. Eam is like a Mr. House type figure, you know what I mean? Someone, and it would make even more sense for this connection with the immortality fruit. You know, it's someone who is long living after they've been, you know, supposed to have passed away, you know?
Yeah.
And sort of taking control of everyone because of their wisdom. And maybe the eyes themselves are the reason the Gore say, follow Eam. And Eam isn't even that strong in their own right, you know what I mean? It's not... I don't know. That I think that could be... That's a pretty interesting angle to go at it, actually. Maybe it is the eyes themselves that they're sort of focusing on.
Something that really fascinates me now that you're on that topic of him potentially not being strong is the idea that both of these characters are going to be, like you said, different types of kings. You know, you have one in which a bunch of people want to follow him, and Luffy. You have people from all shapes and follow. In Eam's case, it's like I want to know how he was in the past, because it seems like in the present he already has that. It's like, even though people may not realize it, they bend a knee to the WG, to the Celestial Dragons, and if he's the leader of them, then he basically rules the world. Which is why for me, for so long, I was like, Rox is Imp. And that was my tinfoil theory for the only person that we know in the entire series wanted specifically to be king of the world was Rox. But then I thought about, wait a minute, Eam is coming from 800 years in the past, presumably. We believe he's coming from all the way back then, so that wouldn't make sense timeline wise. But if Eam just popped up recently, then Rox being Eam made way too much sense to me. But because I'm with you, and I agree that the immortality operation was, and Eam comes from 800 years ago with a direct connection to Joy Boy, to Zunisha, to the giant straw hat, to all that stuff. That's why I believe that you might be right. I want Eam to be just like the rest of the Gordo say, I want him to be strong, but I want them to be strong because I believe that would make for a really fun final saga or a final battle in One Piece fashion. Because if Eam did come from that era, I'm going to assume he was the one who killed Joy Boy, which means that he was the one who killed Gear 5th Joy Boy, like the pinnacle Joy Boy. So what that would mean, this person already knows his ability. So everyone else who goes after the Gear 5th ability or whatever, they're not going to understand it. The only person on the planet who would know about it is the person who already fought this before, which is Eam. So that's why Eam being strong and already having fought somebody who had this ability in the past, that would be that would be great to showcase how Luffy's different from the Joy Boy of the past, where he can overcome this by utilizing the experiences that he has created up until this point, and creating abilities, whatever stuff of that nature. That because I think the only thing that's the same in Luffy's ability is Gear 5th. I think Gear 2nd, well, Gear 3rd too, but Gear 2nd and Gear 4th are Luffy's exclusive abilities. Like, the original Joy Boy did not have, but the original Joy Boy did have Gear 5th. I do believe it, because that is the awakening, that's the pinnacle. So, with that being said, if Eam is strong, that would be the interesting angle to go about it. Now, if he's not strong, I love the idea of him being a king that forces everyone else to fight, whereas Luffy is the person who tells everybody to get on his back and be like, I got this. That is an interesting way of having that parallel between the two, where you have one king who is not going to fight for himself, but everyone wants to follow him too. So it's like the Gorosei, they want to follow this king in the same way the Straw Hats want to follow theirs. So it's like now you have these two kings, who one of them has the following of the entire point. You have individuals from all different races, all different types of kings that he's freed, or all of them are all following him. And you have the actual king of the world, and they have this quote-unquote clashing of wills. That's not actually a hockey clash, but it's just their clashing of wills. And then Luffy has to defeat his strongest fighter, whatever the case happens there. But if you're right and he's not strong, that's the route I would like to see it like take place in, where it would be in that regard. So I would take it either way, because I believe Oda would make it interesting. But I do believe if he is strong, that would be probably maybe outside of the Blackbeard fight, probably Luffy's best fight in regards to Oda would be given the opportunity to really showcase Gear 5th's wackiness at its most wacky, but also someone who can match that, because they've already faced this before. And I think that would be the most... because imagine, right? You've reached the pinnacle of your ability. Everyone you face after this is going to be like, how in the world do I deal with this? But then you have one person who's like, I know exactly how to deal with this. And then now Luffy, the only way Luffy can defeat him is by being Luffy. By doing Luffy exclusive abilities. By doing things that the original Joy Boy never... I think either way, that Luffy whenever that happens, whether it's a conflict where they don't actually fight, and it's something where it's more of just a clashing of ideologies, or if it's a literal battle that they take place that is both of them carrying 800 years of history on their backs. However it ends up being, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. I think it'd be interesting either way.
I just had a really interesting thought now that I'm thinking about it, because you made a good point earlier, where Oda is obviously inspired by Final Fantasy VI, right?
Yeah.
Goated game, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Square, this is just a thing they tend to do in a lot of their final bosses, where the final bosses are made up of previous boss battles, you know? They're sort of like phase bosses, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of meant to embody, look how far you've gone on this journey. You know how to beat this boss because you beat this boss before. If Eam is that character, because Eam is Umi backwards, which is the sea, you know? He controls the seas, the inverse of that. He is everything, you know? I think it would be really crazy if... I don't know how exactly to fully explain this. Luffy changes the world, you know, on his journey. Yeah. While for Eam, the world sort of bends to their will, if that makes sense. They're like the same, yet so different at the same time.
Exactly.
It's all about the way they word it, you know?
Exactly. Yep.
And I think it would be unreal if Eam, like, not knew about all these powers, but essentially Eam is that super broken, super OP person who doesn't have any strength of their own, yet uses other people's strength. Again, this is just like Luffy. Luffy has a lot of strength, but he relies on others. Eam uses others in order to get their abilities, in order to counteract Gear 5th. So they both essentially have the ability to do whatever they want, but it's the way they go about it that's so distinct. I think that's also another... way of going about it. and this is heavily inspired by the final boss of Chrono Trigger, Lavos, which is all about phases, and Lavos is the thing that started all of it.
It started all of it. That's correct.
And that's what EAM is. You know, EAM started the world government, and I love the idea of EAM killing Joy Boy. I think that is a fantastic idea. So EAM knows how to fight Gear 5th.
Yeah.
I love that idea completely, and the Gear 2nd to 4th stuff, and even it would be so crazy if some of the wacky abilities like was it Gum Gum Pinwheel? Imagine that's on EAM. Oh my god.
Yeah. Man.
It's another showcase just to see how far Luffy's progressed. And even though a lot of people would say Luffy's broken now, he's got this ability, EAM knowing specifically how to fight against Gear 5th is like the perfect counteraction to that. And obviously they could have like a hockey stuff as well, you know, which already does counteract Gear 5th. But it's just showing, basically, I want EAM, I don't know if I want them to be strong or not, like physically themselves. I don't need them to be some muscle bound, you know. They're not going to be like Bullet.
Not Virgo,
Yeah, exactly. I think them just having the ability to control others, use the others to their advantage, and sort of be a dichotomy to Luffy, that's really all I want, genuinely.
Yeah. No, yeah, I love that. And it's, I think Oda is going down that route, because I do believe the whole king versus king is going to definitely be very prevalent in the final battle. So regardless of the route that he takes, I feel like that's going to take the main stage, is going to be that king versus king. They're so similar, yet so different type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot that can go into it. Like, Luffy and EAM they're so... I think a lot of people give EAM flack, because EAM is like, why were they introduced earlier? But, like, if they were introduced earlier, I feel like it wouldn't be as mysterious, and that's the point of EAM, you know?
Exactly. It's supposed to... regardless of whether it's... I feel the same way about Gear 5, right? Where, for me, what's important is not whether Oda has had this plan since the beginning. To me, what's important is that now that Oda has this idea, what is he going to do with it? And because the thing is, once again, from a storytelling standpoint, especially knowing how Oda used serendipity, you know, the Nakama scene, that whenever they say goodbye to Vivi, that was thought of the week of. Shanks showing up in Marineford was thought of that week. Like, those are things that Oda came up with on the spot that ended up wrapping everything together so well. Whether Gear 5th was planned from Chapter 1, or whether he came up with it literally when the Who's Who stuff was happening, whenever it was. To me, the only thing that matters is what do you do with it from here on out? Because the idea is so amazing, and he's already executing it at such a high level. That, to me, is the M thing. Where M was brought up in 908. I don't know when he thought of the concept. I know he obviously had to have thought of it when he made the Empty Throne, so he had to have had it in mind in some way, shape, or form. But for me, what's important is not, you know, how long he's had it. It's how it's executed. And I think so far, it's been executed very well, to the point to where we still haven't seen the character again. We haven't even seen a mention towards the character. So it's like, that mystery part of it is just so One Piece that, to me, even though it was introduced so late in the game, it just made so much sense. And it went into, once again, the themes of the series. It's like, it's like, no, you thought the WG was, you know, they like giving equal power. So much so, 5 people rule the entire planet, right? Like, these 5 celestial dragons, 5 members of the Godo City, these 5 Elder Stars. They bring in these individuals, these kings, these 20 kings, to have meetings every single year, every 4 years, and then they come up with certain things, and they're the ones behind all the decisions in the world. But little do they know, the person who's actually doing all of this is just one single dude, just one person who's actually guiding all. And I think that's so One Piece, that whether it was in chapter 908 or 508 or 1108, whenever this would have happened, because thematically it makes sense, we would have all understood. But because it took place in the Reverie, alongside the frozen Straw Hat and the Empty Throne reveal and all that stuff, it just made perfect sense. Because we were like, how much more wacky an insane, and like, how can Oda outdo himself again? He outdoes himself by introducing what's potentially the biggest threat in the verse, which is the lurking legend that he was talking about, and it's so interesting to me. But I see where they're coming from, because once again, it is the old. A lot of people coming into the series now are coming into this from Naruto, and Naruto did that, where there was a character that came out of nowhere at the end of the series, and a lot of people hated that character for that, and so they don't want that to happen again. But I feel like the big difference in that is One Piece has had one or two main individuals that we know we're going to fight in the end. Akainu and Blackbeard. We know for a fact someone on our side is fighting those two characters. Now, where Im comes into place is the whole aftermath, representing the whole story, the potential final he like puts a screw into that, towards like, oh, are we really doing the Akainu thing? Or are we really doing the Blackbeard final thing? And I feel like that's why Im works, personally. But what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree. You made a really great point about them putting the screw in it. You know, it's just like, what is happening? Like, even people who had endgame expectations are now like, but Im is there. You know, there's always this looming it's literally the lurking legend. It's always there. It's always present. And even though the people of the world don't know, you know, they're just having their reverie thinking they're making a difference. But Im is controlling everything. That's
exactly.
That's something I wanted to bring up real quick. I'm going to get right back to it. But a lot of people were annoyed we didn't see the reverie. But I think that's the point. The point is we didn't see the reverie because really none of it mattered. You know? We saw the events outside, which is all that actually mattered. You know, the stuff that actually affects the world, because Im doesn't have any influence over it.
Exactly.
But we didn't see the actual meeting except for, the warlords getting disbanded, which is something that's been brought up before the reverie in the first place. And in regards to Im being, you know, the sort of endgame final opponent thing, I personally wouldn't even say that. Now, I haven't read Naruto, so I can't be, you know, I know so much about it. Yeah. But I think that Im showing up so early, and, for example, Doflamingo in Marineford bringing this up all the way and then having it be revealed as Im makes it feel not as forced.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And having... Oh, you can go.
I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
So the one thing I wanted to bring up as well is Im throwing the screw into the plan, you know? Like, a lot of people think Luffy is going to fight Blackbeard, obviously. I think that's a shoo-in. But a lot of people aren't sure about Akainu anymore because of Im. And people, you know, because the Marines are the face of the world government. You know, they are the image that they put off to show how powerful they are. Now, I do think that the Sabo Akainu battle is a lot more likely now because of this Flame Emperor stuff and the inherited will of Ace, obviously. That's a really really strong tying bond between the two. The fire magma thing may be coming a different outcome because of hockey and all that stuff, because Marineford didn't really have a grip onto what that fully meant at that point. But I do think Im is so fascinating because we don't even know if it'll be Im and then Blackbeard, you know, or Blackbeard and then Im, you know. It's just like, what even is going to happen with this character?
The order. It's like, we have no idea what the order.
Yeah. It's just really crazy, you know. There's so much mystery surrounding the character. We don't even know anything about them except their name and their eyes, and that they are drenched in shadow and everything, and they don't like Vivi for some reason.
Yeah.
But we actually know why they don't, presumably. You know, the traitor kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But there's just so much brewing with Im. It's really fascinating. I feel like there's just so much to talk about. Oh my god. One Piece is just... It's amazing. It's truly amazing. Like,
it truly is. You know, we pressed the button and we're like, we're gonna talk about this latest chapter. We ended up talking about endgame stuff the entire time.
I mean, the chapter is basically endgame stuff. It's just like,
it really is.
Yeah. We did talk about some other stuff, like the Big Mom Elbaf stuff. That's not endgame.
Oh yeah.
But you know, it's possibly endgame.
Yeah. Nah, man. You know, so like, bro, we talked about all of this, and there's still even more stuff to talk about.
Oh my god.
Like that's what makes this series so much fun to cover and talk about with other individuals, because it's just, you have all these ideas inside, but whenever you start bouncing them off each other, it's like then even more ideas come up.
Exactly. It's like,
Crazy.
did I think I would talk about my Momo, like, Moria? Like, oh my god. It's so crazy, man. Like, there's so much. And it's this I feel like the series is so endlessly fascinating because,
Yeah.
like, a lot of series, what they mostly focus on is, like, action, and One Piece, I think that's the thing I care the least about. In One Piece, I think, like,
Yeah.
because the world building is so crazy, it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Imagine all this other stuff that's happening right now.
What I love so much about One Piece's fights, especially now that Gear 5 has been brought up, is I love what Oda, because Oda's a big wrestling, and I am too, which is why, like, when I see One Piece's fights, I see the wrestling influence, where Oda's always going with the storytelling within the battle through the fight. It's very Toriyama-esque. Toriyama's, I think Toriyama's still like the master of telling a story through a fight, but what Oda does is he has like that emotional core in those battles that it not only that, but it's just so interesting. Like, I'll give you a quick example. The gears for me is what makes Luffy's battles so much fun, because you just never know how he's going to overcome his opponent, and it's very JoJo-esque when it comes to Luffy's. Well, it comes to a lot of the fights, specifically for Luffy. I think back to like Usopp versus Perona. These fights where you just do not know how they're gonna win, and that's always the most interesting part. But in Gear 5's case, I love the introduction of this ability so much, and now like fights are back at being like one of my favorite parts of the series, because what Gear 5 does is now it allows Oda to do whatever he wants, and do so. The way Oda flexes his imagination before Gear 5 is in like the world and the storytelling and the character twists. That's what makes One Piece's the imagination. Like, you get to see Oda's imagination just go crazy in creating abilities, how he utilizes characters in certain situations you didn't expect him to, in stories and arcs, all this stuff in the world. But now with Gear 5, he can do that within battle, and I think that's so dope, man. It's like finally the chains have been taken off, and he's not restricted anymore. Now he can use his full brain power to do whatever he wants within battles too, and do the same things he does with his war, where he creates an island made of desserts, or an island made of toy soldiers in his own fictional Spain, or an island made of water. And then we can do all of that, except within battle, and that's why I think Gear 5 changed the game for me for fights, because I'm in line with even though One Piece fights weren't that very high in the spectrum, so the reason why I like this series, the fights still are some of my favorite parts of it, and I think Gear 5 just like brought me back to when I was a kid, and I was watching a lot of these series to see somebody fight someone. For me, bro, right now, on the same level as like seeing Shanks move again or seeing Sabo again, I can't wait to see Gear 5. And that's one of the reasons for it. And I haven't felt this way about wanting to see any action in this story in a long time. Not since I first got into the series. So it's like, I feel like Gear 5 for me changed that. Now I'm actually excited for the fights again. Like, and not just because I've always loved one, but now it's like when I was a kid and I was like, oh, I can't wait to see Gohan do this in Baller, or Ichigo do this in Bleach. Now I feel like with Luffy, it's gone to the point where, oh man, I can't wait to see what Oda does with Gear 5. How wacky will he? How more Looney Tune can he get? You know, like that type of stuff. And so it's just, I feel like the fights are just gonna get more and more fun from here on out, and that's gonna be something exciting for here in the.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel as though, like you said, the chains are off. He's ready to do literally anything. I think my personal favorite Gear 5 thing was by far Luffy using Kaido as a jump rope. That killed
That was
me.
awesome.
That was
That
so
was
awesome. And it was so stupid, but it just,
Yep.
it felt so cool. And, like,
Yeah.
obviously there's, like, the giant Luffy, the lightning bolt. It's just, there's so much insanity that can happen. It's just, and him running like Sonic. It's just like, bro, what is this?
And like Fred Flintstone.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's just like, there's so much that could happen right now. It's just, I can't even imagine what's going to happen. And you make a really great point, because I was thinking action before, and it's like Snake Man, but it's like, at least I had an expectation of what Snake Man could even be. You know, Gear 5, I have no clue what's going to happen right now. And
that's what makes it so fun.
Like, I remember when Luffy punched Kaido so hard that his fist went through the back of his skull. It's just like, it's so cartoony. It's just, this is great.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was so enjoyable. That was so enjoyable, bro.
Yeah,
like,
man.
we got to talk about peak fiction for 2 hours, and it's just like, man,
Yep.
I feel like the time didn't go by, because it's just like, you know, there's so much to talk about, and there's just like, we didn't even bring up like the bounty stuff and all that, but it's been 2 hours, so I'm like, yeah.
No, bro, it genuinely was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, not only is it fun to get together with someone else to talk about the series, but because you and I haven't had the opportunity to talk about, it's like we both had ideas that the other hadn't heard of, and it led to new ideas. And I think that's what made this it made the discussion a blast, just going through that. So I appreciate you so much. Like,
No.
this was a blast.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I haven't had this good of a conversation since, like, well, I mean, it was literally days ago with my friend, but like, for real, yeah. Thank you so much for you know, taking the opportunity. You know, I really appreciate it. If you have not heard of King Recon, check him out. Absolute legend, and especially the chapter reaction streams. Some hilarious stuff happens there very often, and we get to see you lose your mind to the best series of all time. You know, so
Oda, you know, he does things. He does things.
What was that
I
man
appreciate
cooking?
it, man. Yeah, for real. What was he? What is he cooking to make us move away?
Oh my god. But yeah, so if you enjoyed all this, again, check out King Recon's channel, and hopefully, if you somehow got to this, I'm seeing it 2 hours 17 minutes on my recording. If you somehow got to the end of this, you're a real one, and I would love to know, if you can even remember everything we talked about, you know, I'd love to know what your favorite part of this was, because again, there were moments where I was just losing my mind. I was like, man, I'm just like smiling so hard right now.
Same here. Same
Yeah.
here.
But yeah, hope you enjoyed, and have a good one.